warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. No. When I'm done, okay? I will call you up then. Okay. So Khabib time. Anyone know why this is called Khabib time, by the way? No one know why it's called Khabib time? So the president of the fighting championship organization that he used to fight for a long period of time was not giving Khabib his opportunity to fight for a championship. And he kept saying it's not his time yet, it's not his time yet, it's not his time yet. He was missing weight, he was still winning, he never lost, but there were small things here and there that just were not working out. So finally, when it was time for him to start doing it, to compete at an elite level, to fight for a championship, that's when he's like, it's Khabib time now. It's Khabib time now. And so that's why he calls it Khabib time. Because at a certain point, and for Khabib, it was always Khabib time. He felt from the moment he came in, he could have been a champion right away, but they just didn't allow for it. And you'll see the way he's raised, he sort of was raised differently. There's a really, really, really good chronicle. It's like a short documentary. I don't know what you call these mini documentaries. It's called The Chronicles of Dagestan. It was a fighter whose name I don't remember. He went to Dagestan, and he just chronicled the life of the Dagestani fighters who were with Khabib, and namely Khabib's life. And he visited his old home, his old city, his old village, everything. He visited all of it, and he put it into, obviously, a video format. It's on YouTube. And it's really interesting when you look at it. You see the roads, you see the mountains. Like, this is the mountain I used to run every day. These are the roads that they would drive on. And the lifestyle, there's some similarities and there's some differences. And the differences, if you look at our lives today, we have a lot of increases. We have increase in wealth, increase of property size, increase of ownership, increase of all these things. We also have an increase of diabetes, increase of what's this thing called, obesity. Why? Because when we have more of a stagnant lifestyle, then the results of it become apparent on the body. The people there, they worked really hard. And that's what the first few chapters are going to be on. Until you get to like chapter 4 or 5, that's when we start talking about Khabib's father, him setting up a place to train. Prior to that, it is pretty much all conversations about how Khabib was raised. The responsibilities he had, his siblings a little, his parents, and you sort of get to see how he was. So he begins with, I'm a mountaineer just like my grandfather and father. The mountains are our home. The mountains have made us what we are. If you look at the narrations, especially within the seerah, hands, on his hands, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hands up. Good job. So if you look at the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, one of the things they mention is that he grew up in a very difficult place because he'd have to deal with some of the most difficult people. And he grew up in a place in which there wasn't a lot of vegetation, a lot of soil, etc., because you're going to deal with harsh people. So you had to get used to harsh climates. So Khabib, his area naturally will mold him and shape him. So he mentions to live in the mountains is like turning a coin in your hand. Its front side represents the beauty which surrounds us, the opportunity to contemplate daily the majestic landscapes, to listen to the singing of the birds, to eat natural food, all granted by amazing nature. And the other side is work. More precisely, exhausting, ongoing, daily physical labor. And, to work, it was absolutely essential for them to work. If you didn't work, what would happen? You couldn't live. If you did not work, you couldn't live. He mentioned that in Dagestan, families traditionally had a lot of children. And the reason why they had a lot of children was, for multiple reasons. Nowadays, if someone has a family of 3, you think it's a big family. Family of 3 children. 5 people, you think it's large. I have 5 kids. We have 7 people in my family. People think we have an enormous family, which is not that big. How many of you, your aunts and uncles, maybe your parents' generation or your grandparents' generation had like 7, 8 siblings in their family, right? How many? Is it your direct parents or how many? 11? Yeah, 7? And that wasn't abnormal. Anyone else? Yes. Once more? Your dad had 6 siblings, so 7 kids. And that wasn't abnormal. My mom, she has 3 siblings, so only 4 total. My dad had 4 sisters and 1, 2, 3, 4 brothers, so 9 siblings total. And that wasn't abnormal. My dad's, he has 2 older brothers, the second of his older brothers, so the one between him and the eldest. His wife is one of 17 siblings.
I was just saying I'm being mean.
I need you guys to go back there. You're actually messing right now. Okay, good. Thank you. Is one of 17 siblings. And it's not abnormal. I'll talk to her, okay? It's not abnormal. The abnormality is how we now begin to say, okay, everyone has to have, a house in the suburbs with 2.5 children. I don't even know how that works, and 1 dog, etc. Like, that's abnormal. To set some sort of limit on what's considered the perfect family. I have 5 kids. If there's only 2 kids I'm supposed to have, I can't think of which 3 to cut out. Actually, I can think right now which 3 to cut out. But normally I can't think which 3 to cut out, right? Because they all bring something special to the table. And so it was normal to have large families, but also to have 7, 8, even said 10 sons and daughters was normal because you had to carry out so many tasks. Everyone had an assigned task. The assigned task, someone would bring the water in from the well or from the natural source of the river, etc. Someone would, tend to the sheep. Someone would this, someone would that. They had these large families because everyone put in their own share of effort. And when everyone put in their own share, their own fair share, I should say, then the family was able to function. And so he mentions that. Life in the mountains is not easy and demands collective work. No other way. To farm alone is useless. Even the strongest cannot stand it. After all, you need to both tend cattle and farm the land, so it's better to work together with others of the family, shoulder to shoulder. Any of you ever work on a project alone? Okay, so how does it make you feel at the end of it? You feel happy you finished? Yes, you got a good grade, you're happy? Etc. Good. Any of you ever been frustrated when working with partners on a project? They're not carrying their fair share, they're not, whatever the case may be. Anyone ever work with people? It could be on a team, because that's the type of project, a game. It could be at a project at school, at work. And you find that working with people who cooperate well is really a breath of fresh air. Anyone? Yes, yes. What example can you give? There's a lot of projects for school, right? Yeah, even if you have if you're playing soccer or basketball with people or hockey, how I used to play, and you have someone who knows what they're doing, it makes everything flow so well. And so this is actually, this Islamic principle, al-wahdatu khayrun min jalis as-su, being alone is better than evil company. Even in projects, you'd rather work alone than be with company that's lazy. Wa jalis as-salih khayrun min al-wahda. But being with good company is better than being alone. And even in project work and teams, etc., having someone who's good around you, it's better than being alone because it all of a sudden provides this ease for you. So he mentions here, it's better to work together with others of the family, shoulder to shoulder. When everyone takes their responsibility seriously, you're able to move forward. Now, Dagestan, which means Dagestan, stan is usually land or country, it's the country of mountains. It's in the southern part of Russia. And as a country, Russia is obviously extremely large. There's areas that are very beautiful. You have stretches that are like snow-capped mountains. You have by the Caspian Sea, you have shores and warmth. You have all of these different environments, or these different climates, I should say. So he mentions that his area, where he grew up in, Sildi, is considered to be a beautiful place, but it's a difficult place to live in. That's from the high-peaked areas. It's the areas that have high mountains. And so he says that the name of his community that he grew up in is what? In English, it's Eagle. And that's actually where he gets his nickname from. Khabib Nurmagomedov, you would think that he would have the nickname the Bear or something, because he used to wrestle bears. But he was nicknamed Khadija, please stop that. He's playing with it. I will put it back when he's done, okay? He's not harming anyone. Okay. He's nicknamed the Eagle. And yes, there are eagles in the area. But the reason why is because there are characteristics of the eagles. There's a nobility of the eagle, and the people are noble. There's a keen-sightedness of the eagle, and these people are keen-sighted. They're sharp. They have these various characteristics. And so he grew up in this area in Sildi where all of his grandparents grew up, and both his paternal and maternal lines come from that area. And so what he said was that in this area, you had to have certain positive characteristics. You had to be brave. To climb and traverse those trails, there had to be courage in your hearts. You had to also, had to have a sense of, along with courage, a sense of willingness to try. Because if you're not willing to try something, first of all, you're probably not going to be courageous. But secondly, in those areas, then you sort of become stuck. You know, I remember years back, I think you were probably there, when we had the Masjid Huda camp. I think you were a counselor then. Do you remember when we used to do the, what's that called? The high ropes course? What's that thing called when you come down what's that called? Zip line, yeah. Remember that one kid who made it up and he couldn't do anything, he just froze? You were there? Okay, so there's a kid whose name I shall not mention. So the zip line, you have to climb up this really high, it's like a post. You have to climb up. It looks almost like an electrical post. Like you have to climb up, climb up, climb up. You get to the top, then you clip in the other hook for your harness, and then you unclip the first one, and then you go. So he did not want to do it. And his dad really wanted him to do it. And I'm not going to mention what ethnicity his father is, but I could begin to see in his dad that this was really a pride thing. Like, my kid's not going to be the one who doesn't make it up. Everyone else is going up, even though it was scary, it's frightening. So he climbs up, and we're cheering him on, God, you gotta go, you can do it, you can do it. And the organizers, their one thing is we never push someone. Sorry? What was that? You want to use that? Yeah, you can use that chair. Just bring it back when you're done, okay? You're making a bus? Okay, good. And so we cheer him on, and he's going half of it. I can't do it. No, you can do it, you can do it. He gets up. It's a big accomplishment. He gets up. He clipped it in, unclipped the first harness, they clip in the second harness, unclip the first one, so he's safe. And now all he has to do is just jump, and the zip line will take him down. And he sits there, and he sits there, and he sits there. And probably like 40 minutes later, he's not going anywhere. He's not going to go anywhere. The kids are very angry because now they've all lost their turn because this kid's like, I got this, and he's just stuck up there. But he was frozen. He couldn't walk down. So there's two ways to go down. You had to climb down, you had to jump off and take the zip line down. And the zip line would have been faster, but it requires you to jump off. And the climbing down is going to take longer. And I think it's actually a little more frightening because there's something about that climb that it's so like vertical. It's just frightening. Hamna Khadija, what are you guys doing? Okay, that's fine. You can play. Anas, why are you crying? It's okay. They can play what they want to play. You can ask them nicely if they want to sit in your bus. Okay. Khadija sat in it. Okay. Oh yeah. So he was frozen. He was completely incapacitated. He couldn't move, and we kept trying to cheer him on. His dad was. His dad's like, you can do it, you can do it. I could tell inside, like, you better do it. You're going to hear it when you get home. I wonder what happened when you got home. Yes, Anas? You're not a bad boy. You're a good boy. Okay, tell her she's a bad girl. Okay. Okay, tell her she's a good girl. Okay. So, but he was frozen, and we couldn't just get him down. He couldn't move. He was so afraid. And if you're living in these areas where it's not a recreational activity to go up to a high peak, to then jump down while attached to a line, etc., that's just where you live. If that's what's happening, and all of a sudden you don't, you're sort of frozen out of fear or not willing to try, that's going to be a horrible life. The family's not going to move to the mainland just for you. This is their lifestyle. This is what they've known. They haven't gone to school the way others have gone to school. They haven't found positions of work the way others have. So it required you and instilled you certain characteristics instilled within you to become someone better. And so then how does this affect us? Well, our land shapes us. Where we live, the houses we live in, the people we surround ourselves with, it shapes us. But if you look at the Prophet ﷺ, one of the things we see, he didn't travel much, but he was never sedentary. Even as a child, he left Makkah al-Mukarramah, and he was with where? With whom? Halima Sa'adiyah in Banu Sa'ad, in an area that was further away, that was a bit foreign to him. Rasulullah ﷺ, in order to grow from being a prophet only to being a prophet who's also the community leader and the political leader and the military leader, etc., had to move. The Prophet ﷺ spent 2.5 years away from his home in the valley of Abu Talib. The Prophet ﷺ used to go up into the mountains and reflect. There was a constant exposure to different lifestyles and different things the Prophet ﷺ had allowed himself to experience that helped mold him into whom he was. In fact, there's a famous narration, it's in Sahih al-Bukhari, where the Prophet in the Kitab al-Maghazi, he is, they're walking and there's some fruit, and the Prophet tells them, no, don't get from here, get from there. And he's pointing to the top part of this tree. And another companion said, the Messenger of Allah, only a shepherd would know that which fruit is better over here. And the Prophet said that, and I was a shepherd, and the prophets were all shepherds. But you see that he was never allowed to just sit as a merchant, or only sit as a shepherd and not be a merchant, or only trade within Makkah and not go to Syria, etc., etc., etc. There's constant openings that he had to be able to have different experiences, because that instilled with him certain characteristics. And so same with all of us. We should spend time away from our comfort zone. We should eventually go on a camping trip. We should eventually go hiking. You should get accustomed to, what's going to happen. Everyone always talks about, I can't wait till the Mahdi comes. It'll stop all these problems. The Mahdi will come and we're all going to be living in our homes, in our 1,000 thread count sheets, while the war is taking place outside. You think we're all going to be fighting virtually with our what game systems exist today, PS4 or whatever? It's not how it's going to happen. You're going to have to be outside, you have to be in the woods, you have to be in the mountains, etc. We're going to be moving around. So it's hard, to become accustomed to that stuff later. It's easy when you start young. And Khabib, so many of you have memorized or are memorizing Quran. Let me ask you a question. Is it easier to memorize quickly or slowly? Like recite fast when you memorize, recite slow. Which one's easier? Most students do what? They recite fast. It's just easier. You're trying to get it down, you're repeating yourself quickly, you want to get it done within a period of time. Slowly is more difficult. If you recite fast when you're memorizing, when you lead Taraweeh prayer, can you recite fast in Taraweeh prayer? If you memorize fast, can you recite fast? Most people can. If you memorize slow, can you recite fast? Yes, you can speed it up. It's not easy, but it's not hard. If you memorize fast, is it easy to drop down to going slow? No, that's when people struggle.
She needs to use the bathroom.
She already went once. Tell her, she knows where it is. Khadija, you know where the bathroom is, you can go. Go ahead, you know where it is. It's harder to recite slow, but the people who recite slow, then all of a sudden they're able to recite slow in prayer and fast in prayer. The people who take the easier way and they recite fast, when it comes to prayer, it's very hard for them to slow it down. I even look at my kids, they have to work on slowing it down quite a bit. Because when you take an easier route and you pick up those characteristics, it's fine. But then to transfer it back to something difficult is not easy. It's hard. But vice versa is usually easy. So over here, if we grow up in luxury, you think Khabib did not grow up in luxury. If he were to live a difficult life and all of a sudden have to live in luxury, would that be easier? Or to live a luxurious life and then drop down to difficulty, would that be easier? Anyone? The first one's easier, obviously, because it's always easier to go from something hard to something easy. It still feels strange, but it's easier. So many of our parents or grandparents who moved here from overseas, they lived a difficult life there. But to then to acclimate something easier is easier. If we lived here and had to go overseas to some of the places our parents lived, it'd be very difficult. And so he speaks about that quite a bit. And so he mentions that I want to read these two lines. The history of our mountains is filled with examples of unprecedented courage. And I mentioned this. Each new generation of Dagestani mountaineers grows up in a special atmosphere where heroism and self-sacrifice mean a lot in our realities of life. Where every day a man must prove that he deserves to be called a man. That there's certain things you have to then pick up. And so I'm going to sort of move on. Now he mentions something else. He mentions that different invaders throughout history, Timur, Hitler, he even mentions, they wanted to conquer and invade and take over the northeastern Caucasus. They wanted to get into Dagestan, etc. They wanted to, but it was very, very difficult. They knew that whoever controlled this area, then they controlled the narrow passage of communications between the Caucasus Ranges and the Caspian Sea, known as the Caspian Gate. And this area, Dagestan, it connects Europe and Asia. This was the place to conquer. Yet they would not be conquered. Why wouldn't they be conquered? Because that lifestyle and that area is not easy for the vast majority of people to be able to conquer. And so, anyway, coming back, why wasn't it easy? Because these people were very developed. They're very courageous. They're very strong. They're very determined. They had high fortitude. Yeah?
And this is saying that he wants you to clean him.
Okay, tell him I'm coming, okay?
Okay.
You just go inside, tell Bob's coming, and then I'll come. Okay. And so why? Because this predetermined the development of, where are we? Okay. The complexity of running a household in the highlands, coupled with constant threats from the outside, forced the mountaineers to be ever vigilant and, if necessary, take up arms and fight to protect themselves and their families. This predetermined the development of the world's view of the Dagestanis laid the foundations of their mentality. They worked tirelessly, struggling to grow on cliffs and stony slopes, something that could feed the family, but at any moment ready to change the tools of peaceful labor for military arms, a saber or a gun, and go to war. Like, as it is, to plant stuff and grow stuff there on a mountain range is hard. But they would figure it out, and they would live off of it. But they had to put their backhoe, or they had to put their, whatever they're using for planting. Yes?
He cleaned himself.
Oh yeah, I mean, he can clean himself, he knows how to. They would, at any given moment, move that away and then pick up their gun. And to shift from one place to another, or one mindset or another, or one approach to another is not easy. And you look at us. We have to ask ourselves, how ready are we? If we had at any given moment pick up whatever we're doing and switch to something else. And you might be like, yeah, it'd be easy. Let's look at how easy is it when Fajr begins. To get out of bed and switch ourselves from the off position to the on position. To at any moment, just get up and go pray. It's hard. It's hard. And we have alarms and we have lights, etc. They had what? Maybe a rooster crowing, maybe the break of light over the horizon at dawn that allows their eyes to sort of become affected and then begin to wake up. But they were ready at that moment. And it was sort of how they were developed. Now, how do we take this into our own practice? There's many ways. One of the simplest ways is do not ever, and this is Umar radiallahu anhu preached this, the Prophet himself preached this by action as well, never allow yourself to live a life that is all ease. Umar radiallahu anhu would tell to his companions, when you ride on your horses, ride without a saddle sometimes. Get used to bareback riding, because you're not always going to be able to throw the saddle on and bind it together, then jump on your horse, or to get the horse, then put the saddle blanket, then put the saddle. That's not going to always happen. In fact, in one narration, I believe it's in Tirmidhi or it's in Muslim, it's one of the two, that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he was in Madinah Munawwarah. It was late night / early mornings, before Fajr. And there's this loud sound that was very frightening. So the Sahaba, they were scared. They all gathered and they convened because everyone was awoken by that sound. And they all thought to themselves, what should we do? They'd be in disgust, what should we do? Are they invaders? Is this some sort of creature, etc.? Like, what's happening? So they finally decide, we're going to have to meet this thing or these people out in person. Now we have to get our arms, saddle up, get ready to go. As they decide this, they look in a distance, they see a man on a horse. The horse belonged to Abu Talha al-Ansari radiallahu anhu. The man was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's riding on the horse, no saddle. Hair is just like riding. I don't think he had a time to put like a kufi or turban on. And he's riding back, he's armed, he's like, go back, everything's taken care of. Like the Prophet at that instant was able to switch into warrior mode and go and take care of whatever happened out there, or at least check it out and come back, such that everyone else who's still trying to figure out what should we do was put into a sense of calmness and ease that, don't worry about it, everything's taken care of. That is, and this is what living in these situations allows for. So they live in that situation, we don't. So we should at least once in a while sleep on the floor. Once in a while sleep without a blanket. You know, when I go camping with my family, I always purposefully never sleep on the padded part. I never sleep with a blanket when I go camping. And it's freezing sometimes. And even Fahim Sahib a few times try to put like things around it, and I tell you don't do it. Why? Because that's the time, I'm telling you guys, that's the time where I want to rough it. Because those few times when we're outside, it's the only few times I can experience this. Yeah. Good job. Oh, that's very nice, mashallah. I remember some people who I like to look at their training methods. They mention when you go jogging, you should go out without shoes on. You should run without shoes. You know this whole like these, what do they call Metcons? These the Nikes, like developed this thing called Metcon. They're special shoes for working out. Anyway, why did they come up with this concept? And why did they begin to develop these like 1.0, 2.0, etc.? Because they would look at these African runners, like these Nigerians, etc., and why are they always winning these races? And they found they're training without shoes. They're training without shoes. They're accustomed to durability and longevity on their feet. So when you run these marathons, it's not a problem for them. Then when they run, they put on shoes in the actual event. Now for them, it's like they're running on air. But we're already padding our feet with indoor shoes, then outdoor shoes, and this shoes and that shoes. And then our feet hurt all the time because now they're growing weaker, and we're not as accustomed. And you know, like the fascia, like plantar fasciitis, the fascia, that thin film that sort of covers these different regions, it becomes underdeveloped. The whole point is that the circumstances, he even mentions, these circumstances determine a person's world outlook and helped him to always sensibly assess his capabilities. It helped him figure out what they're able to do. You will never figure out what you're able to do unless you allow yourself to be challenged just a little. Just to be challenged just a little. I want to end with two quick parts in the last 5 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up for today. The first is that, where is it? He speaks about his grandparents. My maternal grandfather was one of those who did not return from war, but gave us, his grandchildren, the opportunity to live and work today. I'm also proud of the fact that I'm a descendant of courageous people who fought side by side with the great military leader recognized worldwide, the commander, statesman, spiritual leader of Dagestan, Imam Shamil, rahmatullahi alayh. Anyone ever hear Imam Shamil? If you have not heard of Imam Shamil, go online to YouTube, go to something called Ilm Films, ILM-FILMS. They have a great set of short documentaries, half hour, 20 minutes, some go 40 minutes, about like Qadi Abdul Basit. Very nice. Who else did they have? They had Sheikh bin Baz. They had Umar Mukhtar. All these great, more contemporary Muslims. They're not from the Salaf, they're from the Khalaf. They have Imam Shamil, such a great. They have Khattab, the great mujahid from the Afghani war. They have all these great individuals who did not live that long ago. They have a great documentary on Imam Shamil. And he says that Imam Shamil, for me, as well as for millions of my countrymen and compatriots, is a model of courage and nobility, honor and manhood who serve the Creator and His people. And I don't want to get too much into him, but one of the things that you'll see is that he taught them to be Muslim. And he taught them to be spiritual and to be regular in their practice and to submit to Allah, but also to be dutiful to their country and their people and to their land. And so he established this balance and everyone loved him. And so he said from that, what happened in the Caucasian War from 1817 to 1864, it was Imam Shamil who headed the resistance movement of the mountaineers of Dagestan and Chechnya and who spoke in favor of preserving the vital foundation of their own world when facing colonialism, i.e. what? Be proud of who you are. Don't give up. And those characteristics, they stuck. And then he says about himself, two of my ancestors on the maternal line were among the close associates of the great Imam. Naib Sa'id Magomed or Muhammad. I actually asked my student Muhammad, his name is Magomed as well, why do you guys call yourself Magomed when you say your name is Muhammad? And he said just in Russia it's hard to pronounce Muhammad, so for the Russians who are not Muslim we say Magomed, but then for the Muslims it's Muhammad. So anyway, Naib Sa'id Muhammad Sildinsky, someone from Sildi, where he's from. And the standard bearer, so he mentioned the two. And if you even look, there's a really cool picture with Khabib, with his great-grandfather, that's online, who was one of the students in Khulafa of Imam Shamil. And there's this connection to ancestry that we have just lost today. I've asked you guys once before, how many of you can name beyond your father, your grandfather's name? Not just Dada, not just Nana. Can you name his name? Yes, what is it? I can't hear you. Awesome. Can you remember his father's name? Yes, no? Okay, what about one above? One above. Your father's father. So, your great-grandfather. Great-grandfather? Great-grandfather? No? Yeah. I mean, I've read it so many times, I keep looking at the family tree and I keep forgetting it. But very few of us, if we don't know who they are, then, there's some great people in our history. People sometimes say, oh, this person's Faruqi, this person's Siddiqi, like from the family line of Umar Faruq, family line of Abu Bakr Siddiq, this person's Sayyid from family line of the Prophet ﷺ. All of us are Adami. We're all from the family line of Prophet Adam ﷺ and Prophet Nuh ﷺ, so we have prophetic blood. But we have some great individuals in our history. And because we've cut ourselves off from them, which is sort of, unfortunately, a very Western reality, we don't know where we come from. It's funny, one of my friends was a mufti. He didn't know his own grandfather was a big scholar until one day he wanted to study to become a scholar. His parents didn't want him to study to become a scholar. He spoke to one of his teachers who would become his teacher. Like, what should I do? So he said, let me talk. And he always noticed that this teacher of his would honor his father greatly. And he never figured out why. So finally his father once told him that your dada, your grandfather, was a great scholar. And he's a student of your grandfather. And he's like, oh, but there was only one generation after his father or one link on the chain that he didn't know about that person. But that itself, one, opened the door for him to become a mufti eventually, but two, it was a means by which he was able to gain pride for the family. So this is one of the things that he mentions over here about the ancestry, that they were proud of where they came from, they're proud of what they achieved, and as a result, it allowed them to become who they became. So it's 1:10, I'm going to stop over here, especially because I can tell these kids are in a very destructive mood today, as you can tell over here, so I'm definitely not going to be able to keep them around for Zohar. I'm going to have to take them back. Before I end, I don't know if we're going to have class next week. I have to go on a retreat for a program for which I teach, and I'm not sure if I'll be back in time. I'm going to try to get my hands on the schedule by today, tomorrow, or something like that. And if I can get my hands on the schedule, I'll let you know if we'll be back in time. If not, it will be canceled and will be posted on the WhatsApp, okay? Subhanallah bihamdi, subhanakallah bihamdi, la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk, wa akhiru da'wan, alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Okay, I'm gonna put away. Yeah, no, I'll put it away. Don't worry about it, inshallah. Yeah, no, I got it. Yeah, I'll put it up. It's fine.